Grounded theory, we're looking for categories and relationships. Okay, we're trying to figure out, with thinking about leadership style, what categories will fit with that skill approach, or that trait approach, or the style approach. There's so many different approaches to leadership, so many different theories. What is it that helps us understand it's this trait, or this group of traits, that leads to quality leadership? Okay, so we're trying to find categories and relationships, those categories of traits that are going to lead to quality leadership. As we're going through the research, we're going to continue looking for categories, because we may find out that, okay, well, these three categories fit together, and then there were these three that fit over here. But then we do some more research, and maybe this one from over in this group goes with this group, because we got another one that seems to fit better over this way. And we're constantly trying to shift and maneuver and things, so we lather, rinse, repeat. Okay, and you continue doing this until you find that core group of categories, or that core group of concepts that names the pattern. Okay? That's why it's called the constant comparative approach, because you are constantly comparing as you're going through your research. That's also another term for it is iterative. Okay? Iterative is the process is repeated until the researcher believes all relevant categories have been identified. So you're going through until all relevant categories have been identified, and you're going to continue looking at those to see how they fit together. Keaton, from this textbook right here, Communication Research, Asking Questions, Finding Answers, she defines, the grounded theory as an iterative approach for coding qualitative data into categories. It requires the researchers to examine the relationship between the data and its category, as well as the relationship among the categories. So you're making these categories, you're looking for relationships and how they will fit together, and then you're looking for that one pairing, that one group that's going to help you develop that theory. Okay. I gave you the examples up here. Cultivation theory. What is cultivation theory?
Pretty much the culture you live in, you're going to become like it as you're immersed into it.
What was the study done? What were they looking at with cultivation theory?
Violence on TV.
Violence on TV. And they were trying to find, they're looking at patterns of people and what kinds of shows they watched, and how much they watched those shows, and how often they returned to those shows. And then they were trying to figure out, now, how do you view the world? And what the theory they came up with was cultivation theory, that those people who watched a lot of violent television had a more negative approach to the world. They thought the world was a much harsher place than it actually was, that it was much more dangerous than it actually was. So they were looking for these patterns, and then they came up with the concept of cultivation theory. Contingency theory, those of you in PR, what is that? That would be you.
Yeah. Slipping in theories for
It's not like the theory of if nothing is done to change what somebody perceives about you, then it doesn't go away. Is that what that is?
Contingency theory is looking at a spectrum. On one end, you have accommodation. On the other end, you have advocacy. And depending on, what were there, 98? Do you remember now?
Yeah.
There were 98 variables that fit in here. Depending on the pairings of those variables, you are either going to accommodate the media and the public and say, and it's used for image restoration and crisis communication.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Depending on what those variables are, if you were really at fault, if you made a mistake, if you really screwed up, Exxon Valdez, New England Patriots, you're going to accommodate and apologize and say, we messed up and this is what we're doing to repair the problem. Okay? On the other end, you have advocacy. Tylenol with the cyanide scandal. Today, they would take this route. They would look at it and say, we did nothing wrong. This was not done on our end. We followed all the rules. We followed all practices. We did everything we could to keep everybody safe. Somebody tampered with our product, and therefore cyanide was laced and people were harmed. Now, we're gonna do these things to correct it so this doesn't happen again, but this isn't on us, okay? And then there's a group of them here within the middle that, depending on how those 98 pair together, you fall somewhere here in the spectrum, okay? But they're trying to develop a theory that talks about, and they say it's a substantive, try that word again, substantive theory, because it's a theory that we can put into practice. We're able to take all of this information, put it together, and put it into practice, okay? It's a bottom-up approach. It's a bottom-up approach because you're going from specific observations to general assumptions. You're looking at specific cases and what was done and how people reacted, and you're trying to make a general assumption that if other people face these same situations, they're going to react the same way. It does involve a degree of uncertainty. Why is that?
Because you're talking about the future.
You're talking about the future. You're trying to, for lack of a better term, you're trying to make predictions, which isn't typically what we do in qualitative research, but you're trying to develop a theory to see if that will happen. Now, this is a case where qualitative research may precede quantitative research, because you're trying to develop this theory, and then you'll take the quantitative and go see if you can test it and see if that theory holds true. Okay. Most of what we do in research is going to begin with a theory, and we want to find out if that theory holds. Okay. As far as the history goes, it was introduced by Glasser and Strauss in the discovery of grounded theory. Pretty much anytime you do any other research or you study any more about grounded theory, those two names are going to come together because they were the ones who started developing this practice and how you do this, how you go about developing grounded theory. What you're going to be doing as far as how you develop that theory, the first thing you're going to do is it will come with a lot of interviews, a lot of document analysis, some observation. I'm going to read you here in just a minute what a couple of researchers did. They used focus groups. That's how you're going to gather your information, because you're interviewing people to how did they react. You're going to look at documents to see, did it work? Did they follow the right practices? You're going to do a lot of observation to see how they interact with one another. So it's a very immersive approach, qualitative research. You're immersing yourself in the people that are there. You're immersing yourself into their lives and getting their emotional connections through those interviews. You're going to be doing a lot of document analysis to look at what you're finding, the trends you're finding, did they hold true? Okay. Yeah.
I watched the video on design and layout, and basically, you were looking over, there was a guy that came up with a focus group design where it took measurements from the people within the focus group on certain words, and was it a positive word? Did they get a positive interpretation? Did they get excited over it? And they were given these little handheld devices. And so it was basically discrete, so they could sit there, and the only people that knew what they were reading they were given was in the back room.
Right.
And they were taking all of these readings. And I thought that was, for me, especially with what I did last semester as far as like music and interpretation and word, I thought that'd be the coolest way to do a focus group, was something like that. It's probably expensive and stuff like that, but taking and maybe drawing that down and doing something, I thought that was just absolutely amazing, because it was real discreet as far as you're not looking over, nobody could see what the other person was measuring as far as.
So they weren't asking any questions or getting any kind of verbal response. They were just taking what they read.
Yeah, the guy that initiated it, he was in a back room where he could see the focus group. It was in the mirrored, but so he had somebody else initiating it, and the guy would sit here and basically what he'd do is he'd read through certain words. And in the beginning he said, hey, I'm going to be saying these words and I want you to give a measurement of, like, dislike, and so on. And it was on a scale of 1 to 10. And so all they did was just turn this knob from a 0 point, and it would give readings, and they could print out the readings as far as what words generated the best response from the people.
So that when they're doing their ad copy or what have you, they can use the words that are going to get people thinking positive.
He worked for 3 presidents as advisors for speeches.
Okay.
And if you notice, one of them was not, he took away global warming, and there was another phrase that he found was better.
Climate change.
Yeah, and so if you notice, the Republicans started using climate change for about a 6-year period instead of global warming because of the responses he took from focus groups.
So how does that fit into grounded theory?
Well, when you were talking about just using the focus groups and the interviews, as far as, and I guess I was trying to lead more into going from last semester into this semester, how I would kind of, I don't know, would a focus group be better? You know, is there a way of doing that as far as with music lyrics and stuff like that? With a focus group, or did that not really work that well?
Yeah, it would. I'm just trying to make the connection with what you're talking about
No, I
with
was
this
just, I
topic.
may have gotten off.
But
a
it-
little
no,
bit,
it-
but I was just trying to.
Yes, but we can still bring it back to this. Because what you can do is you're looking for that pattern, the pattern of words, the pattern of phrases that are going to be considered positive language and theory of positive language. And what does that do? That gives people a more positive outlook on their environment, or it makes them want to purchase more, or it makes them feel better about the world. Now, will this fit with communication? Well, since it's language, yeah. It may be more of a psychological or psychology study.
Well,
But
yeah,
that's the way you would take doing a focus group to try and come up with that pattern of words that you can, and you're going to start with that theory. You have an idea of what the theory is going to be, and you're trying to find the pieces that fit into it.
Yeah, like on the shoulders of that, the recent study theory kind of was created, like grounded theory, using grounded theory about if you repeat a chorus like 3 times as a pop song, it's more likely to be in the top 10 of the chart. Yeah.
That's the same sort of thing here, like with
Someone did a
contingency
research
theory.
and got all of his songs together. I don't remember who it was. a group of
Someone
people.
did a research. Sounds like trending out.
Keeper, you can come for me a different day, okay? Someone did some research. Discovered that the chorus thing, and they created a theory based on that. So I think that's more grounded theory. That's what you're looking for.
Where does it come from? What inspires this kind of a study?
Being curious, you know, or seeing something wrong, or seeing something maybe that you perceive as different.
Sell it.
Yeah, money.
We need to find a better way to do this. Advertising, we need to find a better way to use language so that we can sell our product. In music, we need a better way to write songs so they have more of a chance of making us money. In PR, we need a better way of handling crisis than just apologizing for everything. When I was doing PR, when I was coming up, it was all accommodation. When I was at Missouri Southern, we had a student athlete who played for us. We went 7-3. He had a pretty solid year. We brought in a new coach. That coach was going to run the wishbone. This receiver didn't realize he wasn't going to get thrown to, so he transferred to Northeastern State. When he was transferring, our compliance officer checked 3 times because she thought, this doesn't look right. It doesn't look like he was eligible, or he was eligible coming into the season, and went to the NCAA 3 times and said, something's not meshing here. And they said, no, we've already looked at it. He's eligible. He's fine. He can play. So he played for us, was our leading receiver. We go 7-3. Great year. He transfers the next year to Northeastern State. Northeastern State gets to looking at it and saying, we can't figure out how he was eligible. And we said, we went to the NCAA 3 times. We didn't think he was either. So they at Northeastern State, so he's eligible to play for them. They go to the NCAA, and the NCAA says, oh, yeah, you're right. He wasn't eligible to play at Missouri Southern last year. They played an ineligible player. Those 7 wins, they have to vacate those wins. They now went 0-10. Because of my training, because this was before accommodation theory really got rolling, I was the PR officer. I had to be the one to say, you know, we thought we did what we were supposed to do. We obviously made a mistake. We'll be much more diligent in the future to make sure that this thing doesn't happen. We regret that we made this error, yada, yada, yada. And the whole time I'm thinking, this is crap. We did everything we were supposed to do, followed every rule, followed every letter of the law, have documentation to support the fact that we went to the NCAA and they said he was eligible, and now they're sticking it to us. They screwed up, we didn't, but now we get to take the penalty, which actually makes us end up looking pretty good, and oh, poor Missouri Southern, you got screwed. Okay? That would have been that approach. I would really want to be able to take that approach, but the training at the time, the general theory at the time was you take this one. There's got to be a better way. So then you start talking to other professionals and how did they handle crisis situations and what were the contributing factors, the patterns, and you come up with a new theory because you want to find a better way, a more substantive theory to approach to handle the situation. Okay, so that's where it comes from. But you start out with an idea that there's got to be some other way of doing this. What is that? And that's when you start doing the research. That's where the uncertainty comes in. There's got to be a better way. We don't know what it is yet, though. So we need to go looking into it. You think about the leadership. There's got to be a better way to trait. I mean, because just because somebody is 6'4" and has a deep voice and has a PhD.
Like Ross Perot.
Do what?
Like Ross Perot.
Ross, well, he wasn't 6'4". And he did not have a deep voice. Oh, you're saying he didn't have any of that, but he was a good leader. Yes. Led to a multi-billion-dollar company, was the first non-Democrat or Republican to really make a serious run for the White House. Okay, but he didn't fit any of those traits. But he had the skills, and he had the style that the style and skill approaches came up with. So there's got to be something besides that. And so that's what leads you to that. Okay? Capiche? Following along? All right. First thing you need to do is get your data. Do your interviews, get your documents, transcribe, transcode, do all of that stuff, come up with all of that data and lay it out there because you really need to know this data. How come?
Well, if you're creating a theory based on data, you're going to have to be pretty familiar with the data surrounding the theory, so formulate an accurate theory.
Yeah. You just have to know what is there, what you have, so that when you're initially passing through it, you can start coming up with something seems to be continuing here. Something seems to be clicking. Again, it's a constant comparative approach. You have to have a starting point. Your second pass, you start going through, and terms that seem to really stand out, you start highlighting those. And literally taking a highlighter and highlighting those words or phrases. That's step 2. Okay. Step 3, you're going to start looking at those phrases or those words and make your initial categories. So I'm just making this as simple as possible in leadership when you're looking at trait. Height. Language or vocal inflection. Education level. Gender. And you're looking at those types of things to start making those initial categories. Then you go back through it and you start looking for secondary categories or subcategories. And then you're starting with that really broad, okay? And then you're getting to the very specific categories, and then you're going to try and branch it out and say, now this will apply to anybody in any situation, okay? Let me read something to you. This is again from Keaton. Barge and Logis describe how their multiple member research team used grounded theory. The qualitative information from the focus groups was analyzed in 3 stages. First, following the completion of each focus group, the facilitator and 2 recorders who conducted the focus group read over the field notes and identified themes of parental involvement based on the answers provided to the 2 primary questions, tapping into perceptions of high-quality parental involvement. So they had 2 questions that they were trying to answer. They were looking at high-quality parental involvement, and they were asking parents how they got involved in what they did. Using the grounded theory approach from Glasser and Strauss, the facilitator and the 2 recorders generated themes by clustering parent responses and observations using an iterative inductive method. Again, what do you think you're going to be observing here? You're getting responses, but what are you observing?
Patterns.
Well, you're going to create it into patterns, but what are you going to be observing from your respondents?
Trends?
You're
Repeating.
building trends. Don't overthink this.
Keywords.
You're talking, that's looking at the language.
Their responses, like nonverbals.
They're nonverbals. How much time do they spend talking about it, or how excited do they get? Or if I'm talking, if I have Savannah is talking about a way she's really involved as a parent, and I've got 4 other parents over here going, no. Then I can see that, okay, well that may be loosely fitting here. That may be what Savannah does, but it's really not fitting with the rest of the group. Versus I had 4 or 5 other parents that are going, yeah. And they're like, shut up, Savannah, I want to throw something in here. And they're really excited to throw something in. then you're going to be making notes in your field notes of your observations. Okay? That's another reason why when you do focus groups, it's good to record, it's great to video record, because you can go back and watch for those types of things. Once the themes have been articulated, the field notes were searched for verbatim quotes, stories, examples, and metaphors illustrating each theme. The process created a set of themes constituting high-quality parental involvement, along with relevant examples, quotes, and metaphors for each theme. Second, the primary researcher and one facilitator examined the list of themes for each focus group and identified similarities and differences among the groups. So then you're taking the themes you got from each of these focus groups, and you're trying to find now, did this carry over? Because I may have been interviewing the men, the fathers over here, I may have been interviewing the mothers over on this side, or I may have been interviewing parents of multiples versus parents of individual children. And so you're looking for, are there commonalities between groups depending on their gender, how many kids they have, how old their kids are, things like that. However you decide you want to break up your focus groups. A list of common themes was generated that characterized the parental focus groups. In order to count as a theme, it had to be mentioned by at least 5 of the focus groups. Okay? So that's what you need to think about. How am I doing this? And you need to come up with, well, if it's going to fit, if we're going to say that they take an advocacy stance with these variables of our 100 people we're going to do in-depth interviews with, we may have a large team, we're doing this for a long time, then it has to be mentioned by 50 of the individuals. Okay? So that goes into part of your methodology whenever you're deciding how you're going to do it, how you're going to structure your method. Okay? And then finally, once you've done all that, you have your theory. I've developed this theory that these factors have to be in place for this situation. I have developed this cultivation theory that if you watch X number of hours of television and X number of those hours are of crime and violence, and if you have this reaction to those shows, you fit into that category, or you have become jaded by cultivation theory. Okay, you believe the world is a worse place than it actually is. If you follow this style, if you're a great leader because you expect your people to know something, but you're really there as a mentor to guide them. You really care about their relationships. You believe that a happy worker is a good worker, then you fit into the relationship category. If you don't care about the employee, you just care about the bottom line, if you expect them to be trained when they get there, and if you have to continually train them, you're going to push them off to the side, you are more of a task-oriented leader. So my theory is you're going to be one of 2 leaders. And then within that theory, okay, now I want to figure out under what conditions is each theory most important.
So when you're creating the theory, it doesn't have to apply to just everyone in every situation. You can create a theory that applies to these certain people with these characteristics.
Can go both ways. Cultivation theory says if you do this, this, and this, you're going to think the world is the worst place. Contingency theory says if you have these conditions, this is the approach you should take. If you have these conditions, this is the approach you should take. The style theory of leadership says under these conditions, this is the style that is most appropriate, and you need to be thinking along these lines. You need to think about, okay, are you a relationship or a task-oriented person? Just off the top of your head. Are you more concerned about probably more task? You really don't care if you hurt somebody's feelings as long as the job gets done at work?
Not at all, no, I'm probably a relationship.
You're more relationship?
Probably.
Okay. Oh, well, either one's fine. It's either. The point is, with studying leadership, you what?
You worded that weird. You don't care anything about anything. You hate your family, you hate babies. Abuse!
The point of leadership studies is really finding out, okay, what is my leadership style? I need to know, am I relationship focused or am I task focused? If you're relationship focused, okay, I know that I really care about relationships, I really care about individuals, I really care about helping people become the best that they can be, and I believe that's the best way to get the job done. Versus, I believe in the task that, you know, I'm not here to be your buddy. I'm here to get a job done. We have a bottom line that we have to meet, and I have to push forward to get that job done. I'm gonna be more task-oriented. So you know what the theory is. There are two leadership styles, task or relationship. And depending on the situation, I'm gonna have to either go with my gut and go with who I am. I've got a lot of experienced employees. They really know what they're doing. They don't need me over their shoulder and pushing them and driving them. I'm gonna let my natural instincts flow through. Versus I have a lot of young people here that have just started, who aren't really trained. Maybe we've changed over our methods. I'm gonna have to be more task-oriented. I'm gonna have to be more on top of them and pushing them and driving them. I'm gonna have to step out of my comfort zone and use the task method. Okay? One of you two had a hand up. Mike.
Seems to me then that, if you work on cultivating good relationships with your subordinates or your workers, in order to get the task done, that's a tool rather than theory, still task-oriented.
The theory is there's two different types of styles. There are task-oriented leaders or there are relationship-oriented leaders. And it's important for them to know what their orientation is, so they know, are they gonna have to deviate given the situation. Versus a skills-oriented leader that if you have this set of skills, you're gonna be a solid leader. If you have this set of skills, you're gonna be a solid leader. Versus the trait.
I think I'm seeing the difference.
But basically what the theory is saying is leaders come in all shapes and sizes, and it's just depending on, well, we believe in that trait is what's most important. This group, and you could have competing theories. We believe that skills are the most important. We believe that styles are most important. Okay. We believe the situation dictates the leadership style. There's even a contingency theory of leadership. When I saw that, I was like, oh, okay. And I started reading, going, this isn't contingency theory. But I was thinking of the PR. Why do we create the theories? Why is grounded theory a useful qualitative method?
Just to predict the future to some degree.
It wants to give it.
So we can basically figure out how people are going to behave in certain situations. That's why we have a theory about something.
It gives us a starting point.
You know.
We want to develop this theory so we can kind of predict, okay, this is how we think people are going to act. This is how they're going to behave in a certain situation. We can expect, okay, man, everybody thinks this is such a negative place. You know, why is that? Well, cultivation theory says if they're watching a lot of negative television and they're watching a lot of crime and violence during prime time and movies that are really negative, then we're going to feel the world is a worse place. So we go back and we look and say, man, we made a whole lot of blockbusters this year that were about crime and violence, and the top 5 shows on prime time are all Law and Order and Castle and, you know, those violent shows. So, Scandal. Okay. Yeah.
I think it also helps, you know, with different aspects of going from, if you run an organization and you have, maybe you do research on your own organization as far as finding relationships and categories within your employees. Maybe you can uncover certain aspects of your organization and the employees that you didn't know, and maybe direct things to make office work better, communication better, stuff like that, and then as well as marketing. I mean, setting up focus groups and uncovering different categories of people so you can figure out how to market to them better.
Yeah. I really enjoyed, I had 2 classes when I was working on my PhD in leadership. Really enjoyed studying this because part of what we're training you to do is, I mean, even in the undergraduate level, we're training students to be camera operators. But we don't want you to just be a camera operator. I want to prepare you to be a television producer. Or we're training you to be a print journalist. Well, I don't want you just to be a city reporter. I want you to become an editor. I want you to think along those lines. You're in college to really grow, develop your skill set, and you aim up here, because even if you want to work in this level, if you're aiming to be up here, you're going to be the best one here you can be. I never wanted to be an athletic director, but I tried to train myself to be an athletic director because I knew then I'd be a better sports information director. Okay? So I like the study of the study of leadership theory, because whoever you are, you need to think about to which theory do I subscribe? I subscribe to servant leadership, that I'm going to lead you best by serving you, by looking at myself as not your subordinate, but okay, Alex, you have a job to do. What do I need to do to help you be successful? Okay, and Savannah, what you have a job to do. What do I need to do to help you be successful? Because if I'm doing that, if I'm providing you with the tools you need to be successful, I'm going to be successful. But that's what's, you know, again, that style approach. What's my style, so I know if I need to adjust it.
Sorry, quick question. How far would you push your behavior if it comes to helping other people to be successful? How many tools would you provide? When
To
would
the
you
point where they get lazy and they won't do anything, they want me to do everything for them, then I'll go serve the next person. You can go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? What questions? Comments, thoughts? Again, this is a good way to start. You know, we keep talking about that, like with the phenomenology, I believe that you start with quantitative and then go do the qualitative. This is one where you start with the qualitative, you build that theory, and then you test it with the quantitative to see if that's actually true. You ever watch Big Bang Theory? Yeah, what's the difference between Leonard and Sheldon?
Sheldon's EQ is like 0.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
I mean, what kind of physicist is he?
applied.
He's a theoretical physicist. Leonard is an applied physicist. Sheldon comes up with the theories. Leonard applies them and sees and tests them to see. He comes up with protocols to see if those theories are true. Sheldon thinks that Leonard's work is pointless because, you know, we need to have a theory first. And Leonard says, well, yeah, but we have to test to see if your theory is right. And Sheldon, being Sheldon, says, well, of course my theory is right because I'm smarter than everybody else and you should accept it. Okay?
Is that one?